No, not yet.
She's the tester.
All right. Use my computer.
Good morning, everybody. This is Eliza from the Chamber of Commerce Hawaii. Again, nice to see everybody. I have Olin Lagon with me today, and Nadia is here too from the Chamber. And today he's going to talk about local product sourcing, venture capital, and all kinds of really interesting stuff like integrating technology. Olin is a wealth of information every time I something new. So super excited to have him here today. And without further ado, I will let you take it on. Presentation. Hold on one second. We gotta find the presentation.
So look at you, Eliza.
I know, right? All the time.
You don't need an in-house engineer here.
Oh no, no way. Okay. Well, with us, as we set up this.
It's ready? And how do I share my deck?
Should
The
be.
voice quality is poor. Can everybody hear me okay? Someone was saying the quality is poor. Screen. Did you put the deck on here?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, there it is. Oh, it disappeared. There it is. Right, sorry, you guys here. Things are not clicking where they need to go.
Every time.
Yeah?
In the beginning, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Fail.
Yeah, if I can't get this in a couple minutes, we're gonna just roll without the pictures. There's really no words on the deck, just more like photos that shared some of the stories that I'm gonna share with you guys today. Oh, it's wants to print something, that's not what we want. Can I close windows so that?
Yeah. I think that's where your presentation was.
What was there?
Yeah.
I might need your help. I'm a Mac person, so it's.
I was gonna say, you need my help?
Yeah.
What's going on here?
We program with text lines there. Ah, there we go, okay. And how do I switch back to the Zoom? I probably need you to help me just get it going here. Zoom, yeah.
I forget that you're a Mac person.
Yeah. Okay. Windows is.
Okay, share screen. All right, there we go.
There we go. Okay. All right. I'm going to just share a bunch of stories about companies that I've started and really just save the time for Q&A. So feel free to ask about absolutely anything. Fundraising, I've raised a lot of money, exporting product to different countries, different states across the state here. So building hardware, launching software, scaling things up, doing this at the nonprofit level, the for-profit level. So I'm really happy to dive into whatever you guys want to talk about. All right, so this is a PDF. So Nadia, if you can check the chat to make sure that they can hear me, because it says that my quality is really poor on the voice.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first part of my presentation is really my backstory, and I share this because, yeah, there's nothing special with my backstory. I grew up born and raised in Waimanalo, grew up in public housing, have your normal messy families, but raised most of my life in public housing at KPT and Pololo. And so, I think from that perspective, it doesn't require a lot of capital to start companies, and so I come from a family where we didn't really have a lot of capital. So that's the main point of this slide here. So that's my family and some of the places that I live. All right, so the first story is about my teenage company. So while I was in college, I started a company called WorldPoint with some friends. And WorldPoint was my first attempt at building a company that scaled outside of Hawaii. And so these are some of the clients we ended up building and supporting. But ultimately what we did there was we built software for the early internet that managed multiple languages and managed an entire workflow of real-time translation with translators around the world. And so we ended up building a company that became one of the leaders in this space. Disney and IBM and Kodak and the Olympics, and they all used our services, and we were running our systems all out of here. So we had a 24/7 project management team here, about 100 employees here, but most of our team, people spread out around. And so there's some feedback here. Is that? It's good. Okay. Yeah, so this was one where, my first attempt at building world-class software, world-class teams, and launching it here. So all in stuff that we invented here and having a market outside of our islands. So that was the first teenage company. So before I go into the next company, I got burnt out doing that. I was traveling like 50% of the time. So I served in the military, and I always wanted to balance that out with the Peace Corps. So I took a break at the height of this company, and I joined the Peace Corps. So I gave back for a couple of years. I taught at an electromechanical college in Russia, and then launched a company in Russia as well while I was there, and helped local companies. So that break happened. Then I came back home. And then I started working on social ventures, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And so what a social venture is a for-profit company that has a social mission as well as a profit-based mission. You need to make money to sustain yourselves. And so my first social venture was with the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement. So we created a company that hired Native Hawaiians, American Indians, and Alaska Natives. We grew that to about 500 employees and over 60 million in revenue. And we did a lot of work around government contracts or private contracts around scanning and converting documents to electronic documents, and charts into electronic charts. And so there's just a lot of work that we got for doing that kinds of work. And it was just a really interesting way to get involved with my first social venture. Is like our mission was to provide employment for Indigenous people across the United States and here. And so that was one of the hardest things I ever did, but one of the most rewarding things. So here's some photos from our Hawaii team. So we had 3 production facilities here, and then the rest were spread out across Alaska and the continental US, all on Indigenous land. I think we may be still the largest Indigenous group to have ever been started in the United States. All right, so then I left that, and as you can see a pattern here, I'm a really good startup person. So once it gets to a certain scale, then I can hand it off to someone or some other team that can take that to the next level. So the next company I started was around this idea, and that's the napkin. I actually drew the idea. This was like 25 years ago. And so I know it's hard to see on the screen, but what this napkin outlines was the first crowdfunding idea. And so online crowdfunding, the term didn't exist yet, but I had this idea that an organizer could go and organize around a specific fundraising request to purchase something or to pre-fund something or to direct money somewhere and work through the public to bring that money in, and then we would manage the entire flow. And so I launched this with a couple of friends, and we got some patents around this. And as far as we know, we're the first commercial crowdfunding company. Grew this to about $100 million in transactions to support projects around the world. But the ones that I want to call out is the ones that really made us know that this was going to scale. Like when you build something and no one else is doing it, it's sometimes very difficult. And so when we did this, there weren't laws to support this. There weren't systems even here to support us. Like none of the banks locally would work with us. And so we had to do a lot of our work outside of Hawaii. So the upper left, Hokulea, that was the first crowdfunding event. So as far as we know, that's the world's first crowdfunding event was for Hokulea. We partnered with the Star Advertiser, did about 40 grand. And we knew that this would work when that project was our beta launch. The one in the middle was the first viral event that happened on our platform, and it was out of BYU. Some students wanted to create an alternative commencement because Dick Cheney was their speaker and they didn't like him. And so they wanted to raise $100 through our platform so they could go and eat at Wendy's and just have their own protest commencement. But instead of $100, they raised 20 grand. So they got Ralph Nader to come and present, and they had their legitimate alternative commencement, and they had an additional like 15,000 left over, which they donated to charity. And so that was the very first time we saw this happen at scale. Like all these folks, they didn't know any of the donors, and so that was the first like large scale viral crowdfunding event that we know of. The one on the bottom is the one that really, I guess, touched my heart. So this is Monique Stein. KHON actually had a story about this this week that they talked about this first event. But Monique Stein had this genetic condition where if she didn't get a certain medication, she would go blind. And then her daughter inherited the same condition. And so her insurance only provided enough dollars to purchase one set of the medicine. So she started giving it to her daughter. And then she went blind as a result. And so we partnered with Huffington Post. And so this was the first time, is it pretty soft? Yeah. This was the first time that we know of where the public was asked to help with medical care for folks that were struggling. And, you know, these are things that you see every day now. Like there's, 5 or 6 that launch every day here in Hawaii on Facebook. So this is the first time it happened that we know of. And $40,000 or so was raised and went directly to the Steins so that they could support the medicine they needed and cover some of the care that they needed. So that felt really good to be a part of some of that history. Yeah. All right, so that was our crowdfunding event. So we scaled it up. We got the coverage internationally, nationally, and locally. We enabled the first crowdfunding for universities. So Berkeley was the first university to do crowdfunding. Dell was the first company, all built on our platform. Case Foundation was the first foundation to do crowdfunding for fundraising for nonprofits. And so that was also built on our platform. As a geek, this was one of the really cool things. I was watching Steve Jobs during his last keynote, and he's just a really good presenter. And during one of his keynotes, and we didn't know he was going to do this, but he called out one of our technologies. And so that widget there that he's talking about was one of our widgets we did for Disney. And he talked about how the web was moving towards more interaction. So that felt really cool to be acknowledged at his keynote with our technology. All right, so that company then turned into my next venture, which was a nonprofit, so Kanu Hawaii. So we grew a nonprofit to focus on food, energy, waste, and aloha campaigns. And we grew that to about 20,000 members across the state. And we started launching all these innovative campaigns using technology, like how do you bridge people so that thousands of people can take action, whether it's coming out to do cleanups or changing the way you buy food. So we did Eat Local challenges involving restaurants and markets, and we did waste reduction campaigns. We did get out the vote campaigns. And so it's pretty cool to work on some of these change metrics. Of course, all of this was built on technology. And the story that we don't really tell about Kanu is that we actually enabled a whole bunch of national groups to use our technology too. So Guy Kawasaki wrote about us in his book Enchantment as a model for enchanting. And so we ended up doing things like with the TED.com, the TED Prize. We were the first group to actually build out the TED Prize system. So that was launched here and hosted here. We worked with the Real Food Networks and the 911 Commission and the EPA. And there's a bunch of different groups that use the models that we created, both the technology models and then the theories of change that we encapsulated in that technology. All right, so that was a nonprofit.
Hey, Olin, can you talk a little bit about who Guy Kawasaki is? Just aren't familiar.
Yeah, Guy Kawasaki is a local marketing expert, so born and raised here at Iolani School, ended up going to the Bay Area. He was part of the early Apple team. So he worked on before Apple, there was this Lisa platform, so he worked on that. And then he was part of the first marketing wave of launching a Macintosh. And very famous for marketing and speaks around the world. He was actually the first person to be offered the CEO position of Google and Yahoo, and so he's really well respected and sought after. And so he writes these books that are pretty life-changing for folks that are in the marketing space. And so I think if you guys haven't heard of Guy Kawasaki, I would recommend you Google him, watch a couple of videos that he produced, and read some of his books. Okay. All right, let's see. So next. And again, I'm just spinning through so that we can just get to the questions, right? So the next one I launched was my current venture, Shifted Energy. So Shifted was born out of this concern that we needed to get to 100% clean energy, but we weren't going to be able to do that with inclusion. So in other words, if you're renting or you live in a multifamily unit, or if you don't have the funds to repair a roof, then you couldn't participate in the tens of thousands of dollars that come down in tax credits and rebates, and that's not fair. So Shifted was designed so that we could engage the underserved communities. And so it took me about a year to build out the tech. So invented the tech, had a bunch of patents around that. Then we started deploying the tech, and we started to get some pretty good scale. So we won Best of Show at the largest energy conference in the world. So 50,000 people in South Korea. So that was our kickoff. Like, we were pretty proud that the platform that we built and invented here resonated with folks at that international scale. Presented at places like the headquarters of Google, won local awards as well too. I got to do a keynote with Microsoft at their largest conference, which is the annual Developers Conference. So this one happened to be in Canada, so they flew me out to Canada, and CEO couldn't make it of Microsoft, so I got to present with the executive VP of Microsoft and share how we used artificial intelligence to build energy storage. So really geeky stuff, and we can go down that rabbit hole if we need to. All right, and the current state of our company is we're now expanding around the world. So this is just a snapshot of North America. So we're in Canada, across the eastern seaboard. Some growth is happening on the West Coast as well too, just moving to California. And we have a bunch of work up in the Pacific Northwest. So really cool to see that you can build stuff here that you can sell outside of Hawaii. So this is all technology that was invented here that's being sold at this level. All right, next startup. So this one is back to nonprofit. So another one that's still in operations today. This is our 10th year, but Purple Maia Foundation was a foundation co-founded by myself and two friends. And so this was in response to 10 years ago, there were only 3 public high schools that had any type of advanced computer science. And so we talk about diversifying our economy, and that's not a way to do it. And so we wanted to get involved. So we fund semester-long courses for kids to learn real computer science or real engineering, whether it's hardware, building sensors for the low-E, or building mobile games, like whatever the kids wanted to do, we would fund that and get an engineer into those classes and lead that. We've since expanded to things like Found Her, which is a women's accelerator. We have some of the metrics you see here. We have workforce development. We're now on our 9th cohort there. After 12 weeks with us, we can get someone into a job where on average, they make $79,000 starting after 12 weeks. And so that is about 50% higher than the 10-year median at University of Hawaii at Manoa. So there's a lot of opportunity for STEM education and workforce development. So this is Purple Maia. We're continuing to grow, and we're continuously launching new programs out of that group. All right, this next one is more a volunteer thing. So in 2020, there weren't ventilators here, and we were in trouble if it got really bad, the pandemic, and we didn't know how bad it would get. So I jumped in and led a team where we invented and hand-built 200 ventilators. So we could not buy anything. And so, I mean, we could buy some of the motors and stuff, but essentially every single part had to be made from scratch. And so I went to a machine shop and literally like carved out every single part from raw steel and aluminum to make these ventilators. And so you can see that the bottom middle was our first testing at an emergency room with some emergency room doctors. So we got from concept upper left, you see everything is in wood. most of the stuff from Walmart and to a working prototype in an ER in about 2.5 months. Again, all using local talent, folks that are from here, the community. So we had roughly 100 technical people contribute at some level to help us get this through, and it was 100% volunteer. So it shows a lot of the talent and community organizing potential. Yeah. And then my last slide is really just, these are 4 things that I think are important from kind of looking back. And so if you guys are launching companies, I think, if you pay attention to these 4 things, I think it can go a long way. So that first one is really simplicity inspires and complexity fascinates. And so the difference here is, like, if you watch Steve Jobs present, like he's got like one photo in the background, and you watch Bill Gates present, he's got like all these charts, you can't even read the text, and you don't know if you should be reading the charts or listening to him. And so when you're complex, it's fascinating, but it doesn't inspire. And so really shooting for simplicity. So that's the one thing that we try to like get out of the complexity mode and just boil everything down to simplicity. The second one is really a mindset. And so if you start to train your brain to love roadblocks, like when we started crowdfunding, our attorney said, what you're doing is illegal. Like, you're not a bank. You can't take money and pass it out, and you're crossing states. And like every day we heard a million things that told us you can't do it. None of the banks here locally would let us bank with them to do this kind of model. And so these roadblocks are really gifts and puzzles that you can solve. And so every time we got one, like, yeah, we get to solve it. And so that keeps you stoked every day. And, you can see that some personalities, 4, 5, or 6 of these in a row, and you're done, and you get defeated. And that really spreads to the team. So like, you really have to develop this mindset where roadblocks are gifts. The last one, or the second to last one, experience and money are overrated. So every single company you see launched here, I've now launched companies in 4 different industries that have scaled to international customers, like large Fortune 500 customers. Not a single one needed like a mass amount of experience or money. And so these are industries I'm not an expert in. And so I have a chance to learn, I have a chance to think fresh. And there are ways that you can do things on a really tight string budget to get to a point where you're not over engineering, you're not overbuilding. So there's a lot of methodologies that go into this. And I'm happy to help folks if they have specific questions about pathways for that. And this last one is really a personal lifestyle approach, is where innovation is nothing more than 2 known things that are put together in ways that haven't been put together before. So I've filed probably a couple of dozen patents. None of my ideas are original. What's original is that I've taken an idea from one industry and merged it with an idea from another industry, and that's where innovation lies. And so what I recommend there is, if you guys, whether you like it or not, you should always learn. I'm always taking classes. I'm studying Hawaiian now as my 4th or 5th language. And so if you start learning stuff that has nothing to do with what you need to learn, even better. And so, because that's where innovation will start to spark. And so if you develop this personal lifestyle of just constantly learning, not the things you're comfortable with, like, learn hula, even if you don't want to learn how to dance, speak a language that you may even not even use it in the future. So these are ways that you can really start to hone in on the innovation. The patent office followed me around last year, so they featured me as a U.S. innovator for some of the patents that I worked. So if you Google that, then that's an article about my life and the way that I view innovation. So there's some insights in there that I think are useful. So those are some stories. This is just a snapshot of some of the companies that I've started. My email is there, olin.lagon or olinlagon@gmail. Both of them work. And I'm happy to just jump right into questions.
We have a person here in the room with us too. So do you want to introduce yourself and tell us about your business?
Sure. My name is Sean McCormick. I actually work with Ellicott Executive Search, but I had a career in the mainland where I was working in Silicon Valley for 8 years and in Southern California for 12 years. And recently moved home in 2017 to raise my daughter here. So been away for 24 years, came back in 2017, and always interested to hear about tech and innovation and what's going on here.
Reed, you said?
Sean.
Oh, Sean. Yeah, Sean. Nice to meet you, Sean.
Nice to meet you as well.
What companies were you working with in the Bay Area?
So I started at Applied Materials. I did mechanical engineering there, then jumped around to a whole bunch of different places every couple of years. Ended up at a company called Brooks Automation, which built robotics for semiconductor equipment. I did that for a little while and then moved down in Southern California. I worked at various startups, but the last company I was at was a software, enterprise software company for telematics, really kind of large scale fleets. Like AT&T was a customer of ours and got acquired by Verizon in 2016, 2016, and had my daughter, and at that time that's a good time to kind of exit and move home.
Welcome home.
Yeah.
You know, one quick note for the audience is that one of the things that I've seen that's different between here and the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, because I moved 2 companies there,
Yeah.
is we have been gifted with this amazing mixed culture here. And one of I'm like, I love the Japanese culture. It's just so amazing. I studied in Japan.
Yeah.
But they've also gifted us with some of the shame parts of the culture as well too. So if you have a company that goes bankrupt here, like that's not something you would go out and brag. Like,
Yeah.
you know, there's some shame that comes around that. But I didn't see any of that in California. Like, you know, I'm in a bar in San Francisco and this guy just took something and bankrupted, and this other guy's just absolutely fascinating. Like, what did you learn? Like, what are you gonna do next? Can I join you?
Yeah.
Like, it was a very radically different view of I mean, it's normal to fail.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the normal state, is that most businesses over time will fail. And so there's something to be learned from that and move on, and not so much shame part of it.
Yeah.
And so like the reflection is fuel for capitalism. And so I saw that in spades there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to raise my kids there, but
Yeah, it's a different culture, and then Southern California is even much more different. So it's like it's not a good spot to have a family. So that was kind of the caveat for moving.
this is the land of love.
Yeah.
Kindness and compassion are the keys to living a long life. And right. Any questions from folks?
I don't have any questions yet, but do you want to talk a little bit about maybe how I mean, I think the venture capital thing just seems so intimidating. Do you want to talk about how one would even start looking into that in Hawaii if you wanted to have your business here?
Okay, so the question, if you didn't hear it, was about venture capital. So I think the first and foremost, before you even raise money, you've got to have something that is worthy of having money being raised. And so the best book I've ever read on this is from a company called 37 Signals. And so it's a free book. You guys can read it in like 25 minutes. And so if you go online and you look up 37 Signals books, and so their first book is one where it will walk you through this process. And so the process is essentially, you need 3 founders of any kind of company, and they have to have complementary skills. Like you need someone that's technical, you need someone that has on the business side. You can't just have everybody that's like-minded. And you've got to get to what they call an MVP or like minimal viable product. And how do you get there? So they have all these tactics on doing that. And because you've got to get a customer so that you get, the whole point of this book is you've got to get real world feedback. So until you get that, you can't raise money. But the benefit of that is it doesn't cost you much to get that. So in every one of our companies, like with our crowdfunding, how we did it was we had this idea, what crowdfunding was like. We didn't write a single line of code. We got PowerPoint and we kind of put blocks together on what the thing might look like, because it didn't exist. And so we have this like flow, and you click here and it kind of goes to this screen, and you organize an event and you ask friends for money and then you take the money out. So it wasn't real at all. It was just like a bunch of slides that looked kind of real. And then we brought 8 people around. So they're like a table like this, like, can you guys give us feedback? So they went through and gave us really good feedback, took another pass, brought the next 8 people in. How much did that cost us? Nothing. And so by the time we had a couple of rounds of this, we really knew what we needed to build. And then we raised money. We're like, we have a prototype. We have it confirmed that this is something that people would use. We got the real world feedback. We have a couple of groups that are ready to go, like Polynesian Voyaging Society was ready to go with some fundraising. And so that's how you launch something. So when you go to raise money, now you have something that is not just an idea, because ideas are you got to get out of the idea phase. And so that's the best way to start something from scratch. So hopefully that's helpful.
Do you feel like there's a lot of opportunities in Hawaii to find financing like that?
Yes and no. No, in the sense that I hear stories that we don't. Yes, in that we've never had any issue. And so I don't think it's a problem that Hawaii doesn't have venture capital. I think it's a problem that perhaps we don't have the right, like, for everything that we have that's positive here, we don't have the environment of Silicon Valley, like what you saw, where you have just mass differences in culture, where you have, people coming out of the university, you've got multiple universities and world-class universities, you've got people that have launched companies that have angel funds and support networks and mentorships. And so we don't have a lot of that here. So as a result, some of our ideas are not as flushed out as we would like them. And so if I were to just judge the good ideas from there versus the good ideas from here, they all get funded. And so I'm not saying that we don't have good ideas. I'm just saying that we don't have the infrastructure to hone those ideas, because you can't be a chef overnight. But if you had people to mentor you, you've got the great places you can test and get real feedback, you're going to get better. And so, I guess my bottom line is, the better you get, the less hard it will be to raise money from here. Yeah. It's a tough one sometimes, because there should be no expectations that we deserve to have money being raised. Like, that is such a huge burden. Like, you're taking someone's investment, it's not your money, and they believe in your idea enough that they've kind of gifted you with this chance to make your idea come through. And so that's a huge burden that you take on. So it's good to do as much work as you can prior to that to go and raise the money. So I think collectively, and this is not all on but my companies have probably, I'm guessing it's closer to the $75 million range or so in venture capital across the years. Some of that from here as well too. We just, my current company just finished a round last week. We closed a financing round.
And you just got a big grant or something too, you said?
We are now applying for federal grants. Yeah, so we're not an expert in that. So we won a Department of Energy grant to do some of the work in underserved communities. And we're now going to parlay that into a much larger grant application that we actually put in already. And we think that these federal funds are fantastic opportunities for this state to build more leadership around clean energy.
When Melly was here a couple weeks ago, we talked about grants a little bit and contracting, federal contracting, but we talked about how, maybe you can kind of elaborate because we didn't go into it too much. We talked about how you need to have that past performance in order to get the federal contracts, and that maybe working with the county and the state might be a good entry. Do you guys do any of that, or do you have any thoughts about that?
Yes, so there's, the SBA has an 8A program, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with. If you qualify for the amount of income and assets that you have, you might qualify as an SBA 8A company, which gives you some priority to earn some contracts at the federal level. And so that's a great program, but it does require some past performance as well too. And so, but I agree with that. Like, if you aren't able to get to some scale, then just having this designation is not going to get you there. And so I think and that's where I go back to how you start a company. If you start a company based on your idea, you may be wrong. But if you start a company that is really laser focused on what the market wants, like for example, this may not be super ethical, but I have a friend that wanted to know if this idea was viable. So he created the fake product and started putting it on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist just to see if people respond. They're like, yeah, I want that at that price. Then he got feedback. He's like, oh yeah, it doesn't exist yet, but I'm going to build it. But now that you have some interest. And so he used that as his way to like test the market, put it on eBay and stuff. So there are some really creative folks out there that really find great ways to do that customer discovery. And so in other words, I think customer discovery is more important than fundraising. Fundraising is a result of being really good at customer discovery.
Well, I have a question. So, accelerator programs like this could be at risk of getting funding for next year to perpetuate, these kinds of discussions and whatnot for the entrepreneurship community. Can you speak more to the importance of community in this industry?
Yeah, I think like if you look at Purple Maia's website and the programs we launch, we are really mindful that entrepreneurship is not equitable. Like for example, if you read the state's poverty reports, and they come out of the AUW, Aloha United Way, so they call it the ALICE report. So ALICE is an acronym for asset limited and your income is below a threshold, so you're in poverty. 75% of Native Hawaiian families live below that threshold. And so programs like this or accelerators that really try to break out of this and just not have the normal average business person sort of go into this type of work, and you find these new communities, it's meaningful because that's how we uplift everyone. Like, we need to do that. It's not fair if we don't. It's not equitable if we don't. So that's one. Two is the ideas from these communities are insane. Like, they're underserved ideas that need to come to market. And so, like, if you just look at the Native Hawaiian community, there's probably like a dozen ideas that can scale to become large companies that, you know, with a little bit of capital, a little bit of support, would absolutely flourish. And so it's absolutely critical. Even if it's more expensive, even if it's harder to do, we have to do that. We have to go out and find new entrepreneurs and build it up. We need more women in entrepreneurship. We need more women in tech. Like, there's a lot of structural challenges because as you get more diverse, and if you just look at the public companies, those that have the most diverse boards have the highest performance. And so there's a lot of value that's correlated with diversity. So we need to just do a little bit more of that.
Yeah.
We need you to go testify at the state legislature soon.
Yeah, I don't know how effective, you know, I'm this guy from public housing. I do my things and, you know, I work out and go to the beach and I have a very simple life.
No, I mean, I think to Nadia's point, that's in the budget right now, and it's something that we're trying to help HCDC with to get the grants, because if they don't get it, it'll be the second year in a row that they didn't get appropriated funding for the grants, and so a lot of businesses, local businesses, will suffer.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, like at Purple Maia, we funded kids to come up with their own ideas, and so this group on Maui, amazing idea. So these 8th graders said, hey, where are the bats? Opeapea in Hawaii. So like, they read about the bats, they've never seen one, but they know they exist, right? Bats, the native bats here. And so the question was like, how do we find the bats? And so they couldn't find it online. So they asked our kumu, our teacher at Purple Maia, hey, can we build a bat detector? And so we're like, that's exactly why we're here. Yeah. So do the research, like what frequency do they communicate at? All right, so we can build hardware that talks to that frequency. They get it done. And these kids go out at night and they go and find the bats. And then they have the next step idea is like, if we know where the bats are going, then how does that inform development for Maui? Like, where should we not build? Where should we build so that we can make sure we make space for them? Like, these are ideas that we're not tapping into them. So if you have these programs that you can reach out to folks, you know, these are ideas that maybe there's a market for that in other communities as well too. And these are 8th graders.
Wow.
Yeah.
They probably have all the ways to solve our problems in the world right now.
Yeah, and I think it turned out to be like $100 per detector. So
Really?
again, going down to raising money, it was like,
Wow.
how many of you guys need 5? They're like, I think we can spring for $500. You know, so you don't need a lot of VC, right? So we got the teacher there, we got the kids doing the labor, and $500 of equipment, and we got back detectors. In fact, they started recruiting other students to try to spread the word. Like, can you guys go out in your community and use the detectors? And so that's the benefit of reaching out to these communities, is that we're missing out on all of that right now.
Yeah. Amazing.
And that's economic development here.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you look at my companies, every single one of them is about uplifting local innovation. Like, we're selling Hawaii stuff, we're exporting this, and we're proud. And we think this is the best place on earth for creativity.
Mhm.
You know, structurally, Hawaii is a bunch of banks and healthcare systems, like our largest companies. And, you know, maybe we lose HECO. You know, they were almost acquired by a Florida company. You know, Maui, the wildfires are pretty scary, what that might mean in the future. And so some of our larger companies, I don't know if we just continue along that path where we're banks and healthcare companies, but what about these other parts of the economy that are important that we need to uplift?
Mhm. Feels like we're at a turning point.
Right now, I mean, are we gonna get all that buy-in to, you know, agreement that, yes, it's important to fund these programs, or, you know, is the attention gonna be distracted?
Yeah, and innovation is really two things smashing together. And I think this has been ground zero for that on Earth. If you look at the last 150 years, the metric for that is like interracial marriage. It's like, you don't speak the same language, but you love each other, you have a go at it, right? So like, you know, I'm half white and half there was Hawaiian and Filipino, and so like these cultures come together and they make it work. And that's where magic happens. And so we've had all this innovation in our past. And so I think we need to step up our game and tap into that and lead again with some innovation here.
Can you talk a little bit about, I know yesterday we were talking about AI a little bit, but can you talk about how maybe some small businesses here in Hawaii can really take advantage of the AI?
Yeah, okay. So AI is really scary. I've never seen anything in my life. You know, I've done work at MIT and some of the largest companies in our national labs, and AI is far and above scarier than anything I've ever seen. And that's because every 6 months, it grows about tenfold. And so in other words, like the version that was launched 6 months ago versus the one today is 10 times better. And then in 6 months, it's 10 times better. And so that kind of pace is absolutely insane. And I don't think people understand like what that really means in real terms. And so, you know, like 6 months ago, AI bots could start to transcribe video, right? Today, you can feed it a 1 hour video and ask specific questions. Like there was a scene where a person was texting and I didn't see the response because it was fleeting. What was the response on the screen? And then boom, it'll come right back, right up. It can understand that's 6 months of progress. So what will happen in 6 months from now? And so I think what I would recommend is if every small business owner starts really looking at what they call AI agents. And so what an agent is a, like a lot of AI is where you can process information but not taking action on it. So the agent part of it is taking an action on that, that results that you get from AI. And so if you're using AI to, like say you're a local company and you sell a product, you can use AI to really start to do some marketing for you, like reaching out, keeping you abreast on things and doing things like, you know, all the things that your marketing person would do with the marketing. I'm not saying you replace your marketing person, you make your marketing person like a super person. And so using agents to make your team more effective because your competition is. And so if you stop paying attention to this space, every 6 months, there will be another team that's 10 times better and 10 times more efficient than you in part of your business process, whether it's accounting, marketing, you know, production, sales, employee management, all of that is being disruptive. Yeah.
Is there an affordable way to use AI?
We're in the period of free AI, you know, as all these companies are scrambling, free AI, but you pay for the agents. And so I would recommend, I can probably send out some videos if you guys want on how to start getting involved with agents where you can take a specific part of your business and try to use AI to automate that or to make it more effective. And agents are not that expensive, like $20 to $30 a month to, like say you have a social media person, you know, an agent can make that person 100 times better at engaging, getting content together and figuring things out and responding and in using each post as fuel to make the next one better. You know, so that's one thing that AI is really good at is, you know, we don't always have a lot of time to go back in time and reflect, like, how do we do here? Like, I don't know what number, this is like the third series or third one. And so like each one, you can probably like analyze how do we get better and stuff so that the agents can do that 24/7. So process it. So that the key point there is your competition is using it.
Do you think Hawaii is behind on it?
Well, 10 years ago, we had 3 public high schools with computer science.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we're behind. And for a number of reasons, right? Structurally, what are our largest companies? So those are the ones that are hiring. And so banks, healthcare. And so I think just in terms of like a diverse economy, you know, I don't think we have the scale that can push that. And so, yeah, I think we're behind. But it's not just us. Like AI is just moving so fast. Yeah, AI also is, you know, it's the only tech that I've seen that actually makes like decisions. Like everything before that was heuristic. And like, for example, Tesla from version 1 to version 11 of their self-driving software was a bunch of if-then statements. Like, if I see this, then I do that. And there are like millions of them. And so it accounted for every single thing it can see. But then when something new comes out, like, the car's following a truck that has cones in the back, it doesn't know what that is. Like, hey, cones aren't supposed to be moving at 60 miles an hour, so it freaks out because it wasn't told what to do. So that heuristic approach is really hard to keep up with. So you have like billions of lines of code to account for every single thing that you can think about driving. The version 12 that they have is nothing like that. The code base can fit on a little floppy or one of those thumb drives. And it just, yeah, I said floppy. I'm old, right? So I am ARPs knocking on my door. So yeah. The floppy, I say floppy because it's the save icon, right? That's what the kids know about it. They don't know what a floppy is, but it's the save icon. Yeah. So you can, and I use floppy because it's
even the
one
more
bit.
advanced one. The original was big, 5.5.
Yeah, that's where the floppy. So the smaller ones were hard. But yeah, so like that. Version 12 is just a learning system. So it just watches literally millions of hours and just figures out what to do. And it is so much better than all the work they did from version 1 to 11. But now think about this. The example I give you that is because would you be willing to take billions of dollars of investment and say, I think we got to switch and go to this new technology and throw all of that away? That's what they did. So they bought one of the largest supercomputers in the world, training the model. And now the software is so much better than it was when humans had to code for every single instance. So that's an example of disruption. Mm-hmm. Is Ford doing that? I don't know. Is GM doing that? I don't know. So there's a lot of disruption even in that.
I guess there's one person to do it, it'd be Elon.
Yeah,
he's the one who's willing to throw it all on the table.
Yeah, I think EVs are also going to disrupt in ways that people don't realize.
Yeah.
Clean energy is going to be disruptive. EVs are already cheaper than gas cars, ahead of schedule. And next year, they're going to be even cheaper. The year after that, they're going to not only be cheaper, but earn you money. And so gas cars or electric cars that are plugged into the grid, you can get thousands of dollars from the utility company for the use of that battery. So you get paid now for that. And then when you don't need it, you can now license it to robo-taxis that can just take it and just run autonomously to go around and do an Uber, earning you money. Because you only need a car for how many hours a day? And so that's the disruption, and gas cars are never going to be that at all. And so that's an example of why you see 50% of the cars in the world's largest car market switch to EVs, and it's going to happen here too.
Equity just keeps coming to mind. Like, what are the implications there for our state,
Yeah, so with cars, for example, who can buy the EVs? The folks that have charging at home, because that's where 95% of charging happens. So if you're in an apartment or you're renting and you don't have agency to install a charger, can't get an EV. And so what will happen in 2 years is that our most underserved communities are going to be stuck with the most expensive type of technology, which are gas cars.
Yeah.
So that's equity there, yeah. And it'll just continue to get more and more expensive. Like we used to use horses, and so horses were cheap and cars were expensive when they first came out, right? 2 years later, horses were expensive, cars were cheap. Like that's how quick that transaction happened. And so we're seeing that exact curve happen right now too.
I know we're trying to make it so that there's EV in all housing that gets built from now on, but it also makes housing not really affordable to build for developers. So they're gonna have to figure out that balance at some point.
Yeah, single family homes, it doesn't add too much to add that capacity, maybe another $500 to put like EV infrastructure for charging when you're building it. So it's not material, but for an apartment building or for townhomes or other infrastructure where the parking lot is away from the home. And so now you're talking about trenching and high voltage and bringing in more capacity. Yeah, every 3 EVs that are bought equal 1 new home on the grid. So that's how much energy they use. So in other words, like when 3 cars are bought, then HECO has another customer, another full home customer. So, it's a huge opportunity for HECO. If they can now sell that power when they have capacity, it's more income without needing more infrastructure. They're not building the infrastructure to put the meter there and all that. So it's a really amazing opportunity for the utility companies.
So, I've only known you like for the past couple of years, but for me, I feel like, how did you even get to where you are? I mean, it's hard for, I would think it's hard for a small business in Hawaii to even begin to think about how to get to the scale that you are at. I mean, how do they reach that?
Yeah, so my slide where I talked about money is not important. Money is actually an impediment. Like my first company before this one was a bartending school. I was 18 years old. I couldn't drink liquor. I still don't drink liquor. I mean, why did I even start a bartending school? But I did that. So I have this crazy mind, like I have no fear, I just go for it. And so I had no money. Like I was so broke, I couldn't even pay attention. So I was like, how do I start a bartending school? And so the other bartending schools had locations. They were paying rent, signing leases. I wasn't going to do that, but I'm clever, right? So I thought about it. It's like, how do I start my school? And then it dawned on me that when are bars open? Open at night. So what if I can convince a bar owner so that I can use the bar during the day? And so I started calling bars, and I found one. Yeah, well, the guy was like, yeah, sure, you can use it. We split the revenue. I give you 50% of my tuition. So then I went to UH and I put a little, learn how to bartend, meet girls and guys like that. I think that was it. And I had the number, like, you know, I was trying to find a date back then. So that's how I did the thing. I got more than enough folks from UH to come take my class. And I was at a bar. Then I used that as an advantage. Like, we were the only school in a real bar using real equipment. And so if you wanted to go to like the fake bar and the fake location, like be my guest, but like we're for real. And then you can work at night as a barback, as an intern, which is like free labor. So the bars loved it too. So then I grew that and it worked. And so that's an example of, you got to be creative. Like when we started the crowdfunding, we grew that to $100 million, but we started with PowerPoint and a table like this with 8 people around the table, like clicking around, giving us feedback. We had not raised $1 at that. It didn't cost us anything for that. So every single thing that I've done, we launched. So here's another story. So I know a couple of billionaires, and one of them started a tech company, and his partner reached out to me. So I helped recruit some engineers, and the partner asked if I knew where they could get free furniture. Yeah, and so this is a really generous person that donates lots of money, but the way that they start companies is just bare bones. And they would rather have free furniture than go out and buy some. And that's why they're successful. Like they're really good at the limits of not having a lot of money forces you to be creative and innovative, which is what the market is looking for. And the market doesn't want your business plan. Here's my marketing, here's my capital, here's how much I'm going to spend. Like they want to be solving problems, right? They have problems that they want solved, and they don't care how much it costs or what infrastructure you have. And so, yeah, so I guess that what I'm trying to say there is that the argument around fundraising and venture capital is not the right one to have. It's about the stuff that comes before that, and the capital will come. Yeah. So that's how I did it. And I had no other choice, Eliza. Like I didn't have the money to go any other way.
I always love your stories, Olin.
So it's and then so my next one will be the same way. The next one that we start would be the exact same way. Like my current company, energy company, we're so this morning I was on a call with our clients in Arizona. We're expanding there, and we started by me tinkering in my garage. Yeah, I think I bought $100 worth of parts. I got shocked a couple times, which is nothing, right? Just like you shake it off, yeah, and keep going. So, any other questions? Or
do you have any advice about how to work with other local companies here in Hawaii? Especially if there's products that are hard to find here.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to work with companies is not to work with them until there's mutual benefit between the two. And so, like I reached out yesterday to a national manufacturer. They're the world's largest manufacturer of a certain kind of appliance, but I'm bringing stuff to them, but I need stuff from them too. So like I have these clients that would be perfect for their platform, and we would partner up, and they responded, and we're going to get on a call in a couple of days. So I think those local connections when you can see mutual benefit are important, because otherwise it's a request, and the requests are hard. People are busy. And so I don't know what the solution is to that, but if I talk to folks and they bounce ideas, I'm happy to like structure how to make those connections. And I also think that being giving is important too, like being really free. Like there's a lot of angst about sharing ideas, like, oh, someone's gonna steal my idea. What that does is it retards your ability to get feedback from the people that matter. And so I have this absolute trust in just sharing stuff. Like, for example, when I had the epiphany about crowdfunding, I started talking to folks because I was like, is this crazy? Like, my wife thought it was absolutely nuts. Like, that is like one of the dumbest ideas I heard, So I had some bad feedback, but I also got some good one. But I started talking to everyone. In fact, Hawaii Business Magazine heard about it. So they put us on the cover of their magazine before we wrote a single line of code saying, this is it was actually in my slide deck. This is like the four of us, we didn't even have an office. Like, we had this idea, but the thing that they liked was that they knew what we were doing to make that real. And so they thought, what if we cover these guys before they launch and then cover them after they launch? And so that company got acquired. So they bet right with us, right? So they caught our story sort of from the beginning and then also followed us all the way through acquisition. And so that was a good gamble from Hawaii Business, but also the fact that we were free to share this idea on the cover story of a magazine before we even had a single line of code written.
Yeah.
And so that's important to me. You gotta seek out folks and bounce some ideas around. And that's not common.
Yeah.
People want me to sign NDAs and like, I'm not signing that. Like, I invent stuff, I can't commit to that. So if we can't talk freely, then yeah, I'm not gonna do it. So I don't
Is there
sign
a
NDAs.
compromise?
No compromise, like, just, it is what it is, right? So it's like, I'm not gonna steal your idea. Like, I've never done it. Like, why would I start now? Like, I'm not the kind of person who's like, I'm 52 years old and now I just heard of that and I need to steal that and now I'm gonna really go for it. Like, that's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. So, anyway, but.
But I mean, is that unique to Hawaii? I mean, do you think, I don't know that you can get away with that in other places.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I see the same in San Francisco.
Do you?
Yeah, absolutely. Where people just like, they have beer and they just go for it. Like, how do you recruit people and get them excited without that? And that's why they are killing it on the startups, is that they have this freedom, they just go for it. They have this lack of shame in what past or even lack of experience means to, if you're 18, just came out of high school, you have a great idea, you might find some VCs that just say, this is the right course to bet on and go for it. And so we don't do that here.
Mm-hmm. So that's the right culture.
Yeah, I think generally speaking, like when I observe people that have been successful in launching businesses and ideas that become big, they generally are willing to give away things because they think that they have a unique skill set that they can only bring to that particular opportunity that will actually make it big.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had who started True Classic Teas, and his whole experience is around SEO. And he gladly gives away his SEO secret sauce, he says, because his thought is that he can be more creative and out creative people to take advantage of it, like the underlying foundation that drives traffic and visibility. But his creative side is what he thinks is actually the differentiator in his product and his offering. So a lot of times I've seen people that are willing to just share and talk, and they're not afraid of the ideas because they actually think that they bring something unique to the table that they can't replicate.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys heard that, but essentially execution is key. Like, ideas are ideas, right? It's really hard to actually execute pretty well. That's a good point.
Well, how would you recommend people kind of find like-minded people like that here in Hawaii? Are there like different groups, places, HCDC, like where would you go to meet people with those kinds of ideas?
Yeah, you're asking the person that grew up before like Match.com. Yeah, I don't know how the youngins do it nowadays. Yeah, so I was born when the U.S. had 13 states. Yeah, so
You're not.
I don't know how you find that. I have my networks. I've got folks and friends. I think it goes back to that innovation. Like, you've got to get out of your comfort zone, and so go join an ukulele class and learn ukulele. Go learn how to farm in a lo'i, volunteer. Like, that's where magic happens. You start to meet people that, like, if they make enough time to do something like that, that their brain is seeking that innovation, like learning different things. And so you're not gonna find them in your normal channels. And so I find really great, like most of my startups are all folks that I bumped into for my community work. Like my current partner at my energy company, we met because I was on the board of Parents and Children Together, one of the larger like social service agencies. And his mom was one of the executives there. It's like, oh, you would love my son and you guys would get along. You guys do the same things. And she was right. Yeah, we had Thai food and it's like, we've been friends ever since and started this company together. I would not have met him had I not served on the board for this social service agency. And so that's how I would do it. Just get out and go for it. Yeah. I have done like work at the National Federation of the Blind. You name an org, I probably volunteered some kinds of homeless shelters. And I had a friend from Google that was in Chile, and he emailed me. He's like, "Dude, I saw you on the BBC." And I was like, "What do you mean BBC?" He's like, "Yeah, you were like installing a solar system in a homeless camp." And I was like, "Yeah, I do that, but I didn't sign any waiver." He's like, "I'm telling you." So I Googled it, and sure enough, the BBC had a special on Hawaii homelessness that wasn't shown in Hawaii. And I was putting one of my systems in a family on the Waianae. So I take these broken laptop batteries, I strip them out, I refurbish the good batteries, and I put them into packs that can then be reused by families that need to charge their phone or have lights or a fan. And so I was putting one of these in at the Waianae Boat Harbor. And I remember there's this guy filming from a distance. So I didn't know that was the BBC, didn't ask permission or anything like that. But sure enough, and so but that experience of working in the homeless camp, I meet other folks and other, I have other connections and stuff. Like the world is so amazing when you just get out and do things differently.
I think what strikes me too about you particularly, but a lot of professionals I meet in Hawaii is that they're so humble too. I mean, you've done incredible things, but you're very humble about it. You're not one to go and, I'm forcing you to talk about it today, but you're not normally talking about it when I see you,
I don't share my story too often. Yeah, I think, because I don't also think it's incredible because one example of that is I was raised in KPT. It's the largest public housing in the state, and it's the poorest outside of homeless communities. And so when people hear that, they're like blown away. And so the thing that I tell them is that because you feel blown away, it really makes me sad. And it makes me sad because what that really means is that you have no expectation for the kids there. And so why wouldn't you expect me? I'm a kid. Every kid is exactly the same. It doesn't matter where you're born and raised. And so if we have this mindset where your past dictates your future, and that is absolutely our culture here, it's restrictive to too many kids. And so that's why if we work in KPT, I want these kids to know that they're as good as any other kid in any other community, because it's true. It's absolutely true. And so I've been lucky to have people that have transcended that. Like the architect for KPT is Frank Haynes. He's the founder of the Architects Hawaii. A dear friend of mine, he passed away, but he's like an example early on when I was really young. Like he just saw me. He was like, you're kind of a cool guy. I designed KPT and let's go. This was the first time I ever went to Pacific Club. Like, I don't know what that was, right? I'm a simple guy. So I show up in jeans and they're like, Mr. Haynes, I know you've been a member since the US had 13 states, but you cannot go in with your guest. He said he had never been bounced out of the club, that he was there from the 40s or something. Yeah, it was pretty, he thought it was hilarious. So they put us by the pool. Yeah, I had lunch and he had never even been to the pool in his life. So I have these really crazy experiences with people that I have been able to be mentored by that have been really non-traditional mentorships. Like I wasn't the person that I think he would have probably typically mentored, but he took me under his wings and connected to them. Yeah.
So he saw something special in you. Not every kid is so lucky to just come across that fortunate opportunity.
Right.
What do you suggest? How can we bring more mentors into the picture? It sounds like it really affected your direction.
Yeah. So when my dad died, I was 7. And so my mom got me, we were living in KPT at the time. So she got me a big brother, big sister, this guy Dave from the continent. And so Dave did the things that he's supposed to do. He got free tickets to the Islanders games. I watched that, went to the zoo. Went to McDonald's back when they had like birthday parties there and stuff, very different McDonald's. I sat on the Hamburglar seat and stuff. But anyway, but what he did was absolutely mind blowing. And, you know, as a 52-year-old, I'm still affected today. It's like he would call me from time to time when he was excited. Like once he lived in Kaimaki and he called and it was hailing. And he called me, he was like desperately asking me to listen on the call because it was hailing and it was like pounding on the ground. I couldn't hear it. But then when he told me it was hailing, I didn't know it hailed in Hawaii. So like, yeah, I'm 8 or 9. So I go to the library, it's like, wow, you know, it does get cold sometimes. But the fact that he saw me, you know, like what Maya Angelou said is like, if your eyes don't light up when your kids enter the room, then like something is really wrong. And so like when we are able to see kids and see each other, then I think their lives are forever changed. So I had that. I had those folks that saw me, like Frank Haynes and stuff. And they didn't see me because I was special. They saw me because that's what they do. They see people. I'm not good at it. I'm not saying that I'm like the master at that. So I suck at it, to be honest. But like I take classes. I took nonviolent communications classes to build empathy because it's important to me. And I failed the first 3, so I got to take another remedial. So I'm the worst student ever, but I'm not going to give up, you know, so because it's important. I got to get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You failed empathy?
Yeah, I'm not good at it, you know, I'm just not good at it, you know, because, you know, part of it is, I get excited by ideas and so, you know, and that little kid in me comes out and so I've got to really find balance for tempering and be like Frank Haynes and see people and be more of the listener and dialed in. And so I admit that that's not my strength.
Interesting.
At the same time, atypical way of thinking is conducive to innovation, right?
Yeah, but it's hard for relationships, you know, like I see the weird things like, you know, my wife would say, we're driving on the North Shore and it's hot. And she might say, you think it's a good idea to get shave ice? Like I hear a question, right? So I'm like, I'm thinking about the crowd at Matsumoto and the parking. So I was like, no, like I'm being honest, right? But I didn't know it was not a question. So I think the atypical thinking is sometimes not super helpful for relationships. So and then I get confused, like when, you know, she's upset that I said no, it's like, what just happened? You know, yeah, then I have to like figure out, holy moly, like this is beyond my comprehension, you know, so my brain is broken.
It's a, I'm gonna do something that poses a question.
Yeah, but if she said, can we go get some shave ice? I'd be absolutely, you know, I know the traffic sucks and the parking sucks, but you know, look, like so be it. Like, I'm with you and we can stand in line, but not a question, yeah. Sure.
It was so interesting you mentioning Hawaii, it's multicultural, the Japanese, of course, and Shane.
Mhm.
Are there any other differences you picked up on over your, you know, world travels? You know, what makes Hawaii unique?
Different? Yeah, many.
Strengths, weaknesses.
Good question. So like, for example, I've heard that if you want to stump an American, you just ask them to name their great grandparents by name. That's it. 8 of them. Just their names. Like, can you?
My great grandparents?
Yeah.
My first and last name?
Yeah.
Isamu Hatakeyama,
Just one?
I can only go as far as.
How about grandparents? You can name all of your grandparents?
Yes.
Yeah, so in 2 generations, the people that are directly aligned with us, you know, their progeny is us. We don't know their names. 2 generations. And the reason I think, this is my theory, this is based on my observations, right? So when you go to communities, I think we've gone from like 150, 200 years ago, American culture developed in such a way that we started to treasure and amplify and appreciate moving to new places for money. And so when you talk to some Americans, like, oh, my brother's in Boston, it's like, oh, that's cool. Has he been there? No, he's got a new job. And now he's in Charleston, and they just move because it's a better job and maybe not even have to visit the place. And so when you do that, you start to live in communities where your great grandparents' bones are not buried and those stories are not told. And so I think that's really one of the things that makes American capitalism absolutely amazing, is that we will move for opportunity. We don't care about the other things. Like, that is primary and important. Whereas I don't think that's the case with a lot of local families here. where like on my mom's side, there's 800 years of history here. And so when you do that and you share these stories, then I think what happens that's different is that I am willing to bleed and hurt myself and give everything I've got to make this place better, because this is the only place that is my homeland. And if I moved to Florida, there's no way I would feel that. And so if you have a lot of people that feel like I do, that's willing to, bleed for this land, then I think things are different. And so that's one of the things that I observe. So the fact that we can stump Americans by not knowing our great grandparents, and the fact that on average, Americans die over 500 miles from the birthplace, and that is not true in any other industrialized country. So we are the world's most fluid population. And that has pros and cons.
Yeah.
So that's another observation that I don't share these kind of thoughts often, but they're not things that I think are commonly spoken about.
Think they ought to be?
I think so, yeah. I take my shoes off before I go in the home, and when people come in and they wear their shoes in the house, I cringe like, brada, that is just pilau. So I appreciate that from the Japanese, but I don't appreciate the shame, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I'm okay to talk about it, yeah.
Mhm. So I'm going to move forward.
Yeah, acknowledge it, call it, name it, in a compassionate way. Yeah. I think the other difference I see is that I still think that kindness is important here. And for example, I have sworn off any kind of politics or bad mouthing on social media because it has just gotten so horrible. So I post every day because it's important for me to just add more kindness to these platforms that are becoming so bad. They're horrible. And so they're not healthy in whatever way. So I've got to put in kindness as well as like it's okay to be learning new stuff and fumbling around with that. And so I try my best to clean up a little small space of social media with my own personal attempts to be kind.
All right, can you talk about the Berlin Wall thing?
Yeah, the KHON did this story a couple of weeks ago. So this is when I was a student so I dropped out of high school twice. I went to 4 different high schools. I don't want to brag, but my counselor said I was the first student he ever had that had a higher alcohol blood content level than a GPA. So I had a rough go at high school. And so I ended up joining the military, and then I went to Honolulu Community College. I had never taken the SATs. And so while there, I met Evan Tector, a friend of mine, and he said, why are we paying $5 for a student activity fee? So he asked the administration, it's like, what's for student government? It's like, we're student government. We don't have any. So we said, well, we're student government and we want all the money from all the past years. And so so they gave us $100,000, and we did some really cool things. One of it was we dedicated $10,000 to build a piece of the Berlin Wall that we were gifted by the German government. So another student, Warren, had written to the German government, and they authorized only three pieces. Like these are large chunks with graffiti. And so one went to the Ronald Reagan Museum. I forgot where the third went, and we got the third.
Portland, Maine.
Portland, Maine?
I've seen it, that's only really.
Yeah, so there were private pieces that were sold, but this is like a gift from the German government. So we used $10,000 from that, and it sits as a peace monument now at Honolulu Community College. Yeah, in fact, the website that had the information of that was one of the first websites ever online. And the first browser that came out was Mosaic 1.0. So this was 1993. Well, has it got a big ladder right there? Oh,
I know.
is there like where is it? Yeah. And so in 1993, the very first web browser had 10 hard-coded links under the favorites, and one went to Honolulu Community College. So the first browser in the entire world, one link went to Honolulu Community College, and the rest was like MIT and CERN.
Can you
and
tell
stuff.
the Aloha story?
Yeah, there's a lot of innovation here that people don't talk about. Like in the 60s, University of Hawaii had the need to communicate with its satellite campuses. And so the engineers at the time figured out, we want to try to do this wirelessly. And this was before the first wireless network was created. So they invented this thing called AlohaNet. And it was a protocol that allowed 2 systems to speak over the air. And so when you have this protocol is really about, you have to say something that is understood by this other thing, And you have to respond that is understood by this thing to say like, oh yeah, we can speak the same language. And like, hey, how's it? And then you tell me, hey, how's it? Then I know I can speak pidgin with you. So the word that they selected was aloha. And so aloha, the word we can now talk on aloha, the world's first wireless network here. And that network had then been built into 3G, Ethernet, Wi-Fi. And so text messaging. So if I send you a text message, it still uses part of that aloha protocol. So in some words, in some ways, the word aloha is the most spoken word in all of human history. Because every text message, every email, every internet connection, it's still being used. 5G, LTE still uses the aloha protocol. And so that is pretty cool. And who talks about that? You know, here's a question. You guys are the business community. So at one point, there was a Hawaii founded company that had more computers deployed than any company on earth. What was the name of that company? Hawaii-based company, more computers in the field around the world deployed than any company on earth, and they were based here at the time too. So that company was called Verifone. Because every one of those card swipe machines was a computer. And so started on Kauai. Again, you know, a couple local guys, they didn't want to call Bank of Hawaii to read the numbers. Like, hey, you know, here's the number, can I get an authorization? So they wondered if they could do it remotely over a modem. And that's how Verifone was built, in a bar. Yeah. Maybe they went to my school, I don't know. Yeah. And so, but there's a lot of that innovation that happens here. So there's a large number of multi-billion-dollar industries that were created here, just because the innovation part, two different things. You know, like crowdfunding came to me because I had run a community bank prior to that. So we were a statewide community lending institution. And then, so that gave me some of the concepts of banking, like underserved, really non-traditional. And then my Hawaiian culture side, my first son was born. And then when people went around the office and filled out a card, like congratulations, and put in money and like a gift card, it just took too long. So by the time I got the card, like he was born already, and they felt bad, like it got stuck at someone's desk. And I was like, don't feel bad. It just came to me like that was the idea of crowdfunding. It's like we need a better way for people to do that, to organize amongst friends and groups to collect something for some purpose. And there was nothing online that could do that. And so that's the day it was born. So Hawaiian culture. It was an all Hawaiian organization at the time. So.
Are there any other final thoughts you have about how we can leverage Hawaii's uniqueness to, you know, for the benefit of our state?
Yeah. So it's hard as small businesses or even medium-sized businesses to take the time needed to do things that are non-traditional, but I think that is core. Like you've got to encourage it with your staff. Like at our company, we have every other quarter or every other quarter, we have like a whole company will go out and do something. And so like we did one last month in Waimanalo, like we helped rebuild part of a seawall. And so you can take time to talk and make the time to do things that would really result in creativity, innovation, trust, relationships building. And so you need to do that as a company. You need to also do that as an individual, like to get out. And so like I go to the Lo'i every Sunday, and like I've given up, my toes look nuts, my fingers, you know, it is what it is, right? So I go out and do things in the community that maybe I don't feel like doing. I work out 3 days a week. I don't like going, but I just go. Sometimes we get poured on, but like to have that kind of diligence to just put yourself in positions that may not be comfortable. Like that's where growth is, right? When you're comfortable, there's no growth. And so when you're in discomfort, you can use that as massive growth. So that's what my advice would be, get out there in the community. The community needs us too, so get out. And I think you're gonna get paid back in spades. But final thoughts, be kind, eat more poi. What else?
How do we get poi from you?
My poi is the best, yeah. So, but you know, other thing too is like, you know, vote with your pocketbook too. That's another thing too, is like, you know, in some ways it's sad that Amazon has created like 2 or 3 more routes per delivery for USPS, and they come even on Sundays, and it's like they're full of boxes, and it's just so easy to click, 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 but what does that really do? One, do we need that stuff? You know, two, is there a better way to get that from a local source that's paying for people to live and work here? And so I think, you know, where some of the problem, or where some of the challenges is like I haven't driven a gas car in 20 years because I made that commitment. Like I wasn't gonna participate in that. In our home for over 15 years has not used net power because we made that commitment. And so I think making these commitments to help your local place thrive is really important. Yeah, I hope this is helpful, and you guys have my email. I'm not very good at getting back, but I will send 3, and without question, like 1 will work, yeah. Every Friday I delete all my email, yeah, so.
Nice.
Yes, and you can email me and I will track him down.
Yeah, she has my number, she will call me. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Olin, so much for joining us today. And just a reminder to everybody that registered for this, I will send out a link with all of the webinars we've had so far. We have one more on May 10th with Jaylene Kanani. That's the final session. And all of these are also available on the Chamber of Commerce Hawaii YouTube channel, as well as on our website, cochawaii.org. Olin, thank you so much. As I said, I always love chatting with you and learning from you. And any final thoughts you want to share?
No, be kind. Thank you, guys.
Thanks you guys so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Have a great weekend.